Let's start with something simple, but very real. Something most people have experienced. You're on your phone. You send a message to someone close to you, a partner, a friend, or a family member. You see it's delivered. Then, seen. But there's no reply. 5 minutes pass. 10 minutes pass. Still nothing. And that's when your mind starts working. You start to think, why are they ignoring me? Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? They always do this. The story in your head starts building, even without any real evidence. So you send another message. Okay, ignore me then. Now the tone has shifted completely. What started as a simple message has now turned into tension. And the other person hasn't even said a word yet. What actually happened? Just the facts. What did you assume? What story did your mind start creating without confirmation? And if you look at your response, did it match what actually happened or what you thought was happening? Because in this situation, the only real fact is this: they saw your message and didn't reply yet. Everything else, feeling ignored, thinking they're upset, believing they don't care, that came from your interpretation, not from proof. What you just saw is the difference between reacting and responding. Nothing actually happened yet. No conflict. No issue. But your interpretation triggered an emotion, and that emotion drove your action. That's a reaction. Let's lock this in. This is where the real shift happens. Reacting is immediate, emotion-driven, based on assumptions, not facts. Meanwhile, responding is deliberate, controlled, based on clarity, not emotion. The situation didn't change. Your process did, and that process determines the outcome. Here's what most people miss. There is always a gap between trigger to response. That gap might be small, seconds, even milliseconds, but that gap is where leadership lives, because in that space, you get to decide what happens next. If you don't control that gap, your emotions will control your behavior, and once that happens, your reaction is no longer intentional. So the process looks like this: trigger, pause, check, choose, respond. Pause. Stop the automatic reaction. Create space, even if it's just a moment. Check. What am I feeling? What am I assuming? Is this fact or interpretation? Choose. What response will actually move this forward? What outcome do I want from this? Respond. Deliver it clearly, calmly, and intentionally. Reacting feels fast. It feels natural. But responding is what actually works. Now let's bring this into your actual environment. Because in remote work, reactions happen faster and more often. Why? Because there's no tone of voice, no facial expressions. Responses are delayed, and there's heavy reliance on chat and email. Which means one thing: you don't have full context, so your brain fills in the gaps. And most of the time, it fills those gaps with assumptions, not facts. Here are some real-life scenarios. Scenario 1. You send a message to a team member. Can you send the report? They reply, working on it. That's it. Short. No context. No tone. Now your mind starts reacting. Is that attitude? Are they annoyed? Are they brushing me off? If you react, you reply immediately, that's not what I asked. I need a timeline. Now the tone escalates. Tension starts to build. If you respond, your response is pause. Then check. Do I actually know their intent? No. Am I assuming their tone? Yes. Then you respond by saying, got it. When can I expect it? Same situation. No tension created. Clear and professional. Scenario 2. You receive an email from a client or manager. It says, this needs to be corrected. No greeting, no context, just direct. You feel defensive, pressured, maybe even a bit disrespected. If you react, you reply with, "This was based on the previous instructions provided." Now your response sounds defensive. The situation can escalate. But if you respond, your response is, pause. Then check. Is this about me or the task? What outcome do I want here? Then respond with, "Thanks for flagging. I'll review and send an updated version shortly." You stay calm. You stay professional. You stay in control. Scenario 3. You're in a Zoom meeting. A team member challenges your decision in front of others. You feel put on the spot, slightly undermined. If you react, you will cut them off and say, "We've already decided on this. Let's move on." You shut the conversation down, but you also shut them down. If you respond, your response is pause. Even 2 seconds matters. Then say, "I hear your concern. Let's align quickly. What specifically are you seeing?" Now, you maintain authority. You stay composed. You keep the discussion productive. That's leadership. Let's keep this simple and practical. In remote work, your words are your tone. There's no body language, no facial expressions, and not always instant clarification. So it's easy to misunderstand things or assume the wrong meaning. When you react quickly, it's written. It stays there, and it can escalate faster than you expect. But when you take a moment and respond properly, things stay clear. You avoid unnecessary tension, and you stay in control of the conversation. So the goal isn't to be perfect. It's just to slow down enough to think before responding. Reacting is about how you feel in the moment. Responding is about what outcome you want. Now let's look at a real situation. You're managing a remote team. One of your agents sends a message in a public channel. "I don't think this approach is working." No explanation, no context, and everyone can see it. Naturally, you might feel challenged, maybe even a bit disrespected, and the first instinct is to correct it right away. If you react, you might say, "This is the process we follow. Please stick to it." It sounds firm, but it can shut people down. Others might stop sharing ideas or concerns. But if you pause for a moment and think about your response, you might say, "Thanks for raising that. Can you share what's not working from your side?" Now the conversation stays open. You still lead the discussion, but you also get more information and possibly better solutions. Same situation, different approach, better outcome. The key takeaway is this: I don't need more time to be a better leader. I just need to use those few seconds before I respond, to think instead of react.